All right. Hey, friends. We're off here again with the Louisville ProActivist Report. I'm over at Iroquois Park today, and I've got another great interview lined up.
Hello.
Here with my new friend, Rachel Roarx.
Good
Did
to
I
see
say
you.
that right?
You did.
Okay. I probably should have checked beforehand, right? So Rachel's running for Kentucky House District 38.
That's right.
And so walk and talk with us. We're going to walk around the park a little bit and talk about all kinds of things, share this out. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments, and we will get to those if we have time.
Great.
All right, Rachel. So District 38, I know we had redistricting this year.
Yep.
Can you explain what all communities are in District 38?
Absolutely. It is a little choppy, so bear with me. I like to tell people that House District 38, the new House District 38, it is an open seat. So it goes from Dixie to Southern Parkway, the Watterson, down to the Gene Snyder. There's a few exceptions. So we do have Valley Station and Prairie Village, a piece of it that is, and a piece of Fairdale. So those are some exceptions. We do have half of the Beachmont neighborhood, half of the Iroquois, Kenwood Hill area. We have all of Iroquois Park, which we're in today. We have Auburndale. We have my neighborhood where I live over by Iroquois Pizza, Parkwood. We have almost all of Cloverleaf, but some that is not. Hazelwood area. So you name it, we're kind of all over the board, but we don't have almost all of any neighborhood with redistricting. It's pretty chopped up, but it is a good chunk of the South End, and I'm a South End girl, so I'm ready to serve you all.
It's this way, I guess.
Yeah, so this way.
Let me hit some stairs here. All right, so before we get started, just kind of tell people, what made you want to run?
So what made me want to run for office? So we briefly touched on redistricting. So with redistricting this year, one of my beloved state representatives, Mackenzie Cantrell, was drawn out of her House district. And so with that, it left an open seat. And the filing deadline was fast approaching and the maps weren't really clear. So come to find out, I was in the new House District 38. And as someone who really cares about our union workers, about our teachers, someone being a strong voice for women in the General Assembly, I was really disturbed of the fact that we had a female representative, not just one, but also Mary Lou Marzian, who was put in a position where those folks were put in difficult situations with redistricting. So with that, I felt really convicted to want to run for this seat. But also, for many years now, I've been very supportive of female candidates, getting people who are representative of the community to be in office. And so for me, it was really important to run for this seat. Someone with experience with local government and taking that up to the state level is something I'm really passionate about. So for me, there's probably a lot of reasons. I'm sure we're going to touch on them even more during this live. But for me, it was just definitely really important to keep this, the House District 38, a strong female voice for all those things that I mentioned in our community and making sure that we have a good, strong representative.
All right, nice. So before we get into the politics, just tell people a little bit about yourself personally and, just kind of your background, how it pertains here to the district and the city.
Sounds good. So my background, let's go all the way back to what kind of first got me into politics. I was 15 years old. I had a cousin who was a victim of domestic violence and sadly lost her life. So with that, I got really involved in dating and domestic violence legislation, and actually met Joni Jenkins for the first time when my sister and I went to Frankfurt. And it just got me really thinking about, how do we get more women who care about the topics that, I was really passionate about into office, having more voices represented. And so that's kind of where it started for me. But then from there, I was heavily involved in several boards, Louisville Girls Leadership. And now I'm actually the board president over here at the Little Loom House in the South End. It's our hidden gem, but if you don't know what the Little Loom House is, it's a fiber weaving community. The founder was Lou Tate, and she was a master weaver. So lots of history over at the Loom House. Check it out. But also, I worked at UPS. And I went to college and obviously struggled with how do you pay for college? So for me, I went to the University of Louisville. I wanted to stay really local, wanted to stay in my hometown, help take care of my grandma. So I was a caregiver. and I called her my college roommate. That was kind of fun. But with that, I got to learn kind of about those challenges of being a caregiver, going to school. How do you afford this? So I was working nights at UPS. I was an administrative assistant, and so I did that for several years, and then eventually took a position within HR as an administrative assistant. So I got a little taste of HR as well. From there, while I was working nights, I actually was working with Councilwoman Nicole George on her campaign at the time and was her volunteer coordinator. So I got to knock doors in Beachmont, Iroquois, and a whole array of other neighborhoods as well. But it was just really good to hear from folks who live in my community about how they perceive their community, what the challenges are. And once Councilwoman George was elected, I actually applied to be her legislative aide and got that position. So for the past, let's say, 4 years, if we're rounding up, I've been a legislative aide at Metro Council and got to see what the other side of, after like people, tell you their concerns, how do you deal with those on a daily basis? And what are the challenges that come with that? And so I've seen that side of the curtain as well and have a passion for it too. So with that, I deal with everything. My day job, I deal with everything from pulling garbage carts. What am I trying to say? Shopping carts, sometimes full of garbage, out of ditches. I deal with confusing easement, ditch questions all the time, drainage. Trees are a big thing. Is it on private property, public property? How do I pay for it if I have a maintenance need? Air quality, environmental justice, you name it. So it really runs the gamut. I attend all the neighborhood meetings. And from that, I think having had those unique experiences that I've had, I'm really excited and prepared to go out and serve my community at this next level, at the state representative level.
All right. You said something there I want to follow up on.
Sure.
As a legislative aide.
Yep.
So how do you feel like that gives you a leg up going into the job if you were to get it?
Sure. So being a legislative aide is kind of the catch-all position. So not only are you doing constituent outreach, you're also dealing with making sure legislation at times is not problematic, or how can you make it better? So you're giving feedback on what kinds of things do you want to see, how do you communicate it out into the community. So all of these things that I think really come into play as a state representative with one, what kind of legislation are you going to focus on, how are you going to communicate that out to your constituents, how do you take feedback from the community, how do you build upon the challenges that you already know exist. So with all that, I think my eyes have really been opened in a lot of ways to some of the challenges that our community faces that, to be honest, if they were easy to fix, we would have already fixed them. And sometimes we got to try new things. So with that, I feel like I've had a lot of experience already under my belt that when people tell me their issues, they're not new ones for me. And I've, I can either help them on the front end with directing them to where they need to go, explaining about work that's already happening. So, or like, if it's something new, to be able to say like, hey, this is something new to me, let's learn more and dive into that. So have a lot of tools in the toolkit, I guess you could say. I'm like showing my tool belt. But for sure, like a lot of things that people want to tell me about are often local. They say all politics is local at times. It's kind of something I hear a lot. And for me, going out door to door in this campaign, something I hear a lot about is speeding, our infrastructure needs. And when you look at a road, let's say you look at Taylor Newcut, most neighbors don't care if that's a state road or if that's a local road. They just want to make sure that it's safe. They want to make sure that deaths are preventable. They want to feel a certain sense of quality of life, and they want to see improvement for the corridor along with economic development, things like that. And so really partnerships are something that I think I've had elected community members, nonprofits, and it takes all of us to really make improvements in our community, and it takes all of us being vocal and driving those conversations forward if we want to see change. So so I hope that answered the question.
It did indeed. So which direction are we heading here?
Okay, I think we should go along this way.
All right.
Go around the road.
Let's do it. So, all right, it's time to dive into the meat of the situation here and get into your platform. And so, I look at all the candidates out there and just kind of go through platforms. And you know, as a union member, I came across your run here, and I see union.
There's a lot of unions. We love them.
Yeah, so it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, that's probably like the main thing.
It's the heart of the campaign. Here in the South End, we're known for being working class. We're known for a lot of union workers. And like I said, when redistricting happened, I wanted to make sure that our district stayed a strong voice for those union workers. It's something that Mackenzie Cantrell is very passionate about and has been very vocal about. So for me, that was also something I wanted to carry on. Knowing the benefits that come with our union labor, with collective bargaining, such a great tool in the toolkit to be able to fight for the needs of workers. It also usually leads to better healthcare, something that we know the community does, a safeguard that our community really needs in the way of making sure that, you know, if you lose your job, that your family is supported, that you have support structures already in place. And like I said, when you have a job in a union position, your healthcare is often one of the best. And so for me, that is a big deal. Not having to worry about like what happens if I get sick, what happens if I get injured on the job. Will someone go to bat for me if like things aren't adding up in the workplace? So I think all of those kinds of supports are a safeguard in our community for making sure that people don't fall through the cracks as easily. And have a support system for being able to navigate through hard times.
So where are we heading up here?
I think we're gonna take a right.
Okay. So what do you think is the best way the Metro Council can support the unions?
The Metro Council or the state rep or the state? Sorry. It's confusing.
Yeah.
I worked
so many interviews too. I know, just did Metro the other day.
You did. So at the state level, supporting unions, number one is right to work legislation needs to go. Yes. It's something that you'll see me having a hard voice on when votes like that come up. Definitely want to appeal right to work policies, but also if that, let's say that's not on the table for this session, something that I care a lot about is making sure that folks have the ability to collectively bargain, to form new unions. So those are the types of things that I do think as we look to policies, and also if we're keeping track of our negotiations, you know, moving forward like they should. So with things like that, those are the types of things that I think our state folks do have some influence on. And that's why, you know, when I lead with pro-union labor, that's kind of where my mind goes, that I want the community to know, I want you to know where I'm going to be voting when those types of votes come up. And anything that harms union labor, I want to make sure that we're being vocal and being on the House floor explaining why it's problematic and organizing around those things.
I'm really happy to hear somebody talk about repealing right to work, because that just doesn't happen too often. So yeah, I can really appreciate that. And just curious, what brings up so much appreciation for unions? Where does it come from?
Oh, where does it come from? Well, I think, like I said, I mean, I know a lot of people who do have union jobs and really benefit from those union jobs and have a increased quality of life because of them. Having worked for UPS, I got to see the benefit that not only, you know, I was, like I said, I was an administrative worker, but I got to see the benefit of how much better my job was because I was surrounded by union employees, and the benefits that I got because they had to attract me. So with that, and also like protections for workers and safety was at the forefront of my workplace. And when it wasn't, I got to be vocal about it. So all that to be said, I also got to see, you know, union representatives fight for employees, and it also made reporting so much better. Like, you know, you have to actually document when you have a conversation with somebody about their getting yelled at. Anyway, you'd actually have a conversation with somebody if their performance in the workplace was not meeting expectations, then that had to be documented. And I think that's a really important step that without those processes in place often fall through the cracks, and then it gets hard to determine, you know, where those breakdowns are. So I think it makes everything in the workplace a little bit better. Historically speaking, my grandfather was a union member at GE.
Oh, nice.
Or was it? Yeah, I think it was GE. And so with that, I'm actually named after him. So Eugene Roarx, that was my grandfather. He died 3 weeks after I was born. So my dad likes to remind that of me when I went right to work, got on the ballot. He was like, I'm going to roll over, and my grandpa's rolling over in his grave right now. So all that being said, I think there's history, but I've seen benefit being in the community is my biggest motivator, and obviously I've had a lot of support because of being compelled in that way, and I just really see the benefits.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I can definitely see why my union is supporting you the way that they are. So.
Well, thank you.
All right. So another group of union workers are teachers.
Yes.
And I know you have a lot of support for public school teachers. So yep. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I'll also say my background was not in public education. I grew up in the Catholic school system. My family is Catholic. I am Catholic. And with that, so Lawrence, Notre Dame, when it merged, and then Holy Cross High School. That's where I met my husband. He was number 1 in the class, and I was number 2, which I told him freshman year that would be the way it shook out. And so I'm going to be right there with you. I'm a close second for valedictorian. He laughed at me. He doesn't remember that story. So all that to be said, education, it wasn't until I actually got to the University of Louisville where just like, of course, the attacks on liberal arts education, the fact that our financial aid had not increased, but yet our tuition had gone up, things like the Pell Grant, all things that I was really passionate about advocating for. And with that, we can go this way. Okay. It'll be less traffic. So all things I was really passionate about. And then, of course, noticing as well, like there's, all this talk of like charter schools and things that really pull money away from public education. And while I did grow up and my family chose to put funding into Catholic education, I think for community-wise, it's just been really apparent that it's the backbone of our community, that we want to have a strong public education system, that if you care about all members of the community, that is where we need to put our attention. And our public school teachers do that work every day. And often our topic of discussion in the Kentucky General Assembly, and I hear things from teachers like, please just leave us alone, like for a second, like let us teach and let us do our jobs and stop adding more things to it. So I hear that stress, and I also think like supporting public school, funding it, high school, and an array of elementary schools and middle schools as well. So with that, I have definitely seen the need in the community and the need for community members to support our public schools in all things, including sports, including making sure that we're spreading positivity and letting those students know that they are worthy and that they deserve our support and our enthusiasm, instead of us, when something negative comes out in the media, us latching onto those things and trying to think that, labeling schools a bad school is not helpful, but really just investing and making sure that we are taking a closer look at how we can actually help the schools in our areas and support them, I think is really important.
Only bad school really is a school that's not trying to improve. So
there you go.
All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. Talk about the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
I noticed that you have a lot of support for that, so elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. So I think one thing that we've seen be under attack recently is rights on both women and folks that are anything else. So all that to be said, I think with LGBTQ, non-binary folks, gay, lesbian, all the things, transgender, we have a lot of discussion in the Kentucky General Assembly that involves language, that involves things you can and cannot do. And honestly, it's been a lot of attacks. And so with that, I think it's really important to make sure that folks know that I'm going to be a vocal voice for that community and making sure that we're, voting no on things that are harmful, reaching out to groups to make sure that we're being vocal on the House floor as to why they're problematic and harmful. And obviously, the big topic of discussion right now is Amendment 2 with the anti-abortion amendment. And so for that, don't forget to vote no on Amendment 2 when your ballot comes across. But all that to be said, like, there's some very real attacks on our bodies. Anyone who's able to reproduce and carry a child, it's some really scary times. And so for that, I think it's important to me to be really honest about the need for gender affirming care in our healthcare system, that's expected, that people, I've had friends who are, afraid to go to the doctor, maybe have had a violent assault that's happened and haven't been to the doctor because they don't know what to expect. I think that's really sad, and our community can do better. And I think those items of conversation need to be talked about more and humanized a lot more, because I think it's really easy if you don't know someone who's had those experiences to be really critical. But I think the more that, we know people in our community that have had these struggles, the more that we realize putting these emphasis on attacks in terms of legislation on this community is really harmful, and it really harms us all because it takes rights away from the ones that we have.
All right, so we are in Iroquois Park today. I'm with Rachel Roarx, who's running for Kentucky House District 38. So let's see where you want to head from here.
We can make a loop.
Come back around. All right. So yeah, we're doing the walk and talk. Share this out. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments, and we'll try to get to those at the end. So I know you touched on abortion there a little bit. Mm-hmm. Did you want to talk some more about women's issues, women's rights?
So I guess what I just want to say is there's about 1,000,001 scenarios as to how one could end up pregnant, whether you want to be pregnant, don't want to be pregnant, have other medical issues that are conflicting with that pregnancy. And I think it's very problematic to use such extreme language that Amendment 2 offers to outright put a ban on all things that are categorized as abortion, when things that we just have come to know and include in terms of basic health care. So things like a DNC, things like when you have a miscarriage, all things that are very difficult in general. And I personally, usually when I talk about this, say, like, I don't need to know everything that could ever happen to a woman or someone with reproductive organs that can carry a child. I don't need to know everything, because that's a decision that you have to make between yourself and your doctor. I shouldn't be involved in that. I don't want to be involved in it. And I think a lot of people in the community know that in this really extreme language that Amendment 2 offers, that anyone who's lived long enough to have known someone with these experiences or haven't heard about them yet, I think the community is starting to really have more conversations around, well, this happened to me and this is why I made the choice I did, or maybe that hasn't happened to me, but I heard about this and I'm really scared. For me, I've not been pregnant, but I'm assuming healthy enough to become pregnant. And it really scares me what could happen, if I had medical complications and, needed health care, and then like a legal team has to come in and prove what they're doing to me because, it might not meet the letter of the law. And then I have to prolong something that could be potentially endangering my life. And, again, 1,000,001 scenarios. I don't know them all, and I shouldn't have to know them all to know that that's going to be a choice that's going to, come into play in that moment. And so for me, I think voting no on Amendment 2 is really important to Kentucky as a whole, to our nation. And, I think just talk to folks about what that experience looks like for them. And it's some really difficult times and conversations to be having, but very personal ones too.
I'm feeling a little bit better about that vote after what we saw in Kansas.
Yep.
So hopefully we can duplicate that here. So moving on, I know you talk about bridging connections for South Louisville. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean specifically?
So bridging connections for South Louisville has become kind of my slogan, which I love, because
you got it there in your car.
I got it there in my car. Which side is it on? Which side's it on? Is it right? I don't even know. It should be on my website. So with that, bridging connections for South Louisville what that means is essentially not only our infrastructure needs, but also connections in the community. So, like I said before, I do believe that I have a lot of experience heading into this role. And I think our community right now, what we need is to all step up, say what we want for the South End, and be able to bridge those connections. So, a lot of us like to say, like, why does the East End have this and why don't we? Well, in a lot of ways, we need volunteers. We need folks that want to step up, join a committee, work on issues, that they want to volunteer in the park one day a week, pick up trash. We need folks that want to help out and do these things, but also there's things that already exist and are taking place. So being able to bridge those connections, say, here's what's already going on, here's where the gap is, and bridge those connections, I think are really important. I talked about it earlier, bridging connections between our local level and our state levels. So working with the good folks at Public Works, bridging those connections with KYTC, which is the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. So just being able to bring partners to the table to really discuss these issues, find a path forward, or just communicate out into the community what's already going on and letting them know how they can join in. So I do all that one-on-one when I meet people at the door, when I meet people out in the community. But those are the things that I'm really excited about working on in Frankfort. Outside of legislation, is really building up the community. I've had a lot of support, not a lot of support, but a lot of experience doing that community building block by block within our neighborhoods. And I hope to continue some of that and also do some of that in our schools as well.
All right. This next one's a long one, so I got to read it. Talking about expanding community-based waivers for disability and aging communities. So speak on that for me.
Yeah. So community-based waivers, these are things like the Michelle P. waiver, SCL. If you have one, you know it very well. Or if you have a family member who has a waiver, you know it. And there's brain injury waivers, all sorts of things. So with that, one of the things that's really come up in the campaign has been talking about the gaps that exist in funding right now. How do we, waivers have slots. And so only so many people a year are going to get a slot within those waiver systems. And that could, a waiver also, is what keeps you out of a nursing home. So it's kind of like, it's allowing you to live in community. So with that, that funding, do we really know the full extent of the need in the community for how many slots you should actually be funding? Looking closer at that, looking at the caps on how you can spend that money on a personal care assistant. Is there enough hours in the week for you to fund the care that you need? Or do you have to make choices about, well, I need to pay someone less because I need them for longer hours based on your budget? Those are very real things that our community members are experiencing every day in the differently abled community, disability community. And with that, those are things that I hope to be able to work on more as a state representative to really look closer at what the need is, project out what that financial need is, and hope to obviously get that funded. But with that, I think people need to know where that gap is in terms of need. Also, there's the application system for how do you get a waiver to begin with? And do you have the support you need to navigate that process to even do that application, I think is a big question. So for me, those are kind of some of the things that I'm hoping to work on, get down into the weeds on, and in Frankfort with some of our partners in our agencies, and also work with the community on, because there's been folks that have definitely been working on that for a lot longer than I have, and I hope to continue that work.
Honestly, you're the first candidate that I've talked to this cycle that's really said, first in any cycle that's talked about waivers. So that's really cool. But also the first one I've talked to this cycle that's really talking about the aging communities, the disability communities. It's kind of off topic, but have you followed kind of the issues with TARC 3?
I have.
Would you like to speak on that at all?
Well, I think TARC 3, so as you know, lots of missed appointments, things like that. So a lot missed trips, experiences also that maybe have been negative on a case-by-case level. I know TARC is definitely listening to those experiences. A lot of it has to do with staffing. And getting enough drivers to meet the need that the community has. So they haven't necessarily gone into the place of saying that they're not going to provide service, but it's definitely something that they could go that route, but they have not chosen to. And so with that, that means that a lot of folks have, they'll call for a ride, maybe nobody comes, things like that. And so obviously when you're in the aging or differently able disability community, all of that can be a real challenge to actually being in community and having a reliable ride and being independent. So, or even just fears around like what happens if I, have to navigate this alone. So I've definitely heard those challenges, and it's definitely a complex and hard challenge to also solve, because right now with the staffing shortages and things like that, it's been a real struggle. So it's definitely a need that I've, continued to follow, but hope that we can come to a resolution on, but we definitely need more drivers.
All right. Next one on the list would talk a lot about asset-based community development. So get into that a little bit for me.
So what is asset-based community development? A lot of folks, I think our brains are wired to go towards negatives. And with that means a lot of times we can continue. We're walking and
get
talking.
A little bit different sun angle on us here.
Sun angle, love it. So asset-based community development. Brains are wired towards negatives. And with that means that we often see the negatives in our community and we focus on them. And it can be really discouraging when we don't see progress. So what I'd like to do, because I'm in the community space, and I think it's also helpful not only to bring hope into the community, but also for us not getting burned out, is to focus on our assets. What are the things in your community that are a staple that if they went away, it would be like detrimental to the community? Where people see as a resource, the places that you want to uplift and maybe even invest a little bit more in, but sometimes maybe it needs investment, but it is an asset. So mapping assets in the community is always a good place to start. Iroquois Park is a great asset in our community. And while, yes, we know that there's things that we want to see more of, like we want to see more litter pickups, we want to see more traffic control, more improvements to the assets within the park, it's still something that we take great pride in, that we want to uplift and celebrate in the community. So making sure that we're promoting things in a positive light, even if we are critical of them, I think it is our job to be critical at times. We want to make sure that we're celebrating what we do have in our areas rather than coming from a deficit place of the things that we don't have. Celebrating the assets also helps bring more assets. So for me, I think really capitalizing on the good that's going on in a neighborhood, promoting that, and then being able to say well, here's a gap and here's a need that we need to be able to serve, or hey, we need a little bit more investment here to really see this up to its full potential. I like to start from an asset-based perspective or a positive-based perspective because it allows us to build on what's already existing rather than coming to it from a place of, oh, we don't have anything or it's really bad here. And I think it's really important for branding of areas. Louisville, it's no secret, is a collection of neighborhoods. There's a bug. I don't like bugs.
Yeah, let's get out of this little spot there on me too.
It's okay.
It's like two of them.
Oh no. So I don't like to hear them. Anyway, but we're a collection of neighborhoods and people really want to celebrate their neighborhoods and see them invested in. And so I think for a branding perspective, especially at the South End, this goes back to bridging connections with for South Louisville. I think it's really important to brand our places, and South End, we need to be doing a good job of celebrating what we do have here, why it's a great place to live, work, and play, and work on the things that we do want to see come to our community. We know that those things are out there. I'm sure we can all rattle off a list of at least 10 off the top of our head. But all that being said, we have such great assets, like Sister Bean Coffee's right across the street here. Colonial Gardens is a great date night location, or any night of the week. But all that to be said, great event space. Love taking my nieces and nephews to the park. We have a lot of pocket parks in the area. So, literally a block away from your house, you can go walk to a park. Fairdale, great parks out there. High schools are assets. Community spaces are all assets. So with all that, I like to really celebrate those things. Government center that we have in Southwest. I like to say that I live by Iroquois Pizza over by me. So it's a lot about businesses. It's a lot about community places. But starting from the place of what we have versus what we don't have is a really great way to start to see those improvements and to start to see those investments come to fruition in our community. And I'm a really big champion of talking very highly of the South End And I want to see more people call this home, and I want to see more people get involved.
I like it. Sounds like you put a lot of thought into everything on your platform. Brought up a question that just hit me. Is Jefferson Memorial Forest in your district?
It is just outside. It is nearby. Okay. Our largest urban forest, and we definitely want to see that continue to grow as well. Something that I hope to be able to do is also, work with my colleagues. These borders of the districts, let's be honest. I mean, it's good to know where you live and what district you're in and who's your representative, but we need to be working together. And in order to see those things come to reality, there's things I can do independently, yes, but there's things that we need collective energy on. And you'll see me committed to improving the South End as a whole, as well as Louisville, but also, working with our partners out in Kentucky. And I think it's all just, there's lots of layers to everything that we do at the state level, because we're in between local and we're in between federal. So there's a lot of connections and a lot of layers to be thinking about at all times. And that's what the community is here for, is to remind me of what I committed myself to and what you all want to see take place.
Yeah, the reason I brought up Jefferson Forest is just, I know they're talking about, commercializing it a little bit, putting businesses and stuff out there. I hike there, I take my dogs there. I don't want to see that. I'm hoping that that's not a direction it goes. I was just curious if you're for that or against that.
I haven't seen an official plan, so I think I'll hold off my comments for what's actually proposed. But I think, more community input is definitely probably warranted.
Gotcha. All right. So we've gone through your platform. Here's the time where I ask my famous question. Everybody knows I'm the net neutrality guy. So with it being in flux, going back and forth here at the federal level, my opinion is, as a state, we need to make that a state law, guarantee net neutrality. So I'm just curious what your stance would be if that came up. Would that be something that you would support?
Yes, I would definitely be supportive of net neutrality and the laws to, put that into the code.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Are there any topics that we haven't touched on yet that you would like to address?
I'm a listener, so I really like to have, nuanced conversations. Well, there's a lot of gray in Frankfort, and maybe at least when I was interning, I actually interned for Attica Scott several years back, and I saw a lot of issues that came up that, I think when the news covers them, sometimes it seems like they're really black and white, but when you're really there in the day-to-day, sometimes they're pretty gray. And they don't, not always, but like I said, that's why I try to be really vocal about where I'm at in terms of my platform, things I why. If you don't understand why somebody's making the vote that they do, take the time to call them, talk through it with them. At the Metro Council level, I've always understood where people were coming from on their votes. And that's been really helpful just to know, sometimes there's a little bit more to why someone votes the way that they do. And they've put a lot of thought into it. So I think sometimes it's our snap perception that they haven't, but they probably have. And sometimes that you still might disagree. That's okay. But it's good to know where people are coming from, and ask those questions. Sometimes there's room for improvement while it's being drafted, and it's good to hear from folks about these are the things I'm concerned about. Here's some suggestions on how to fix it. I'm a human. I like to tell people that. So if you have a lot of issues that you want to share with me, let's list them off one by one, but I got to write them down. So I think, there is something to, humanizing our elected officials. And you can still adamantly hate or adamantly love or somewhere in between. But I think it's really good to know where they're coming from and kind of slow down the process and send in your feedback.
All right. Okay, so we reached the end here. So here's the part where you get to just talk to the voters out there and make your pitch, why they should vote for you. And then when you finish up with that, just let people know how they can contribute and look up more about you, donate, volunteer, those kinds of things.
Excellent. So I am Rachel Roarx. I am running for state representative, House District 38. I will be on the ballot November the 8th. Vote early, vote often. So, look up, make sure you make a plan to go vote. If you need a ride, we can hook you up. My cell phone 502-724-7529. Call or text. You can find me at RachelRoarx.com. My platform should be up if it's not already. It should be up in several days. All my endorsements are up on there. We're trying to keep that updated. And you can read a little bit more about me and my background. My email is contact@RachelRoarx.com. Again, that's contact@RachelRoarx.com. And you can find me on Facebook at Rachel Roarx District 38. Rachel Roarx District 38 on Facebook. Hope to expand that to Instagram soon, and TikTok as well. But then, we're getting there. But so to be continued. If you would like to volunteer, we do door knock every weekend. So shoot me an email, shoot me a text. I'd love to hear from you. We can get you a T-shirt. We can go out door knocking. That'd be great. We also, if you'd like to donate, we would love to have your donations. You can find that link at RachelRoarx.com as well. Did I forget anything?
I don't think so.
Well, don't forget to vote for me November the 8th. I will be the youngest elected ever to the Kentucky General Assembly, so that will be something to celebrate for Kentucky. Mackenzie Cantrell, when she was elected to the 38th, was also the youngest at that time, so it's fitting that we're reclaiming the title.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on today. I think you have a good grasp of the issues. You know what you want to do, and you seem like somebody who will listen. So
absolutely, I'm a learner too. I'm a listener and I'm a learner. So definitely reach out if you have ideas or things that you think I should be focusing on. And thank you again for this opportunity. It's really nice to be able to talk to everyone.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, and come out and visit Iroquois Park. We'd love to have you in the South End.
Definitely, it's very nice out here. They're doing the pumpkin thing again this year, so check that out. I might try to make that this year.
It's wonderful.
So, okay. So thanks for watching, you all. But if you do want to help, you can do that by boosting the algorithm through liking, sharing, commenting. Click all those appropriate buttons. Click that bell if you're on YouTube. Click that follow button if you're on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter as well. I'm also on Odyssey. Quick programming note, next week, Thursday night, I'm having a judicial forum. So I will have 5 judicial candidates on at the same time. Let's see whom I have: Ted Schaus, Tracy Davis, Yvette De La Guardia, Karen Faulkner, Shannon Favre will all be here. That's 6 o'clock. So, 5 at once, you get a lot of bang for your buck. So check that out. I have a couple other ones coming up in October, so look out for that. I'll get those scheduled and working on a few more. So yeah, trying to get you covered with all. Thanks for watching, you. I will see you next time. Remember, always think critically. Awesome.